Hi there, welcome to this Sunday's edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. We have a wonderful show packaged just for you. More after this message.
While we have seen a reduction in terms of the damage being done to hydrants, we still continue to see situations where persons, they continue to abuse the hydrants. And so we want to encourage persons not to abuse the hydrants, to make sure that they protect them. If they're on your street, and if you're in doubt whether or not they're working, you need to contact us so we can come and do a test of that hydrant to make sure that it's properly working.
For hydrant maintenance concerns, contact the Jamaica Fire Brigade nearest you or call 876-878-4642, 876-858-0459, or 876-276-6671.
Helmet safety can mean the difference between life and death on Jamaica's roads. On this week's episode of Get the Facts, we examine the new Jamaica Standard Specification 374-2026 for protective helmets and how it will strengthen road safety, improve consumer protection, and ensure access to certified high-quality helmets.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. Motorcycle safety is once again in the spotlight as the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, BSJ, moves to strengthen protections for road users with the introduction of the Jamaica Standard Specification 374-2026, a new standard for protective helmets. Joining us to tell us more about this new initiative are Shane Slater, Senior Standards Development Officer, and Khadija James King, Standards Development Officer at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. Welcome to the program, both.
Thanks for having us. All
right, let's start with you, Sir Slater. Tell us about this, let me get the title right, Jamaica Standard Specification 374-2026. Now, on the lid of it, it doesn't tell us much. So you have to tell us what is it and why was it important now?
Okay, so the JS 374 is the Jamaican Standard Specification for protective helmets for road users. So it's applicable to helmets designed for 2- or 3-wheel vehicles. So it sets out the quality and safety requirements that these helmets must meet to ensure that it's really protecting you when you use them. And it enables us to have better monitoring and enforcement because it sets out the minimum requirements that we would check for.
So why now?
Why now? Because, we see the rise in road fatalities and motorcycles account for 30% of these fatalities.
And they're getting more popular.
Exactly. And we see that with the use of a certified helmet, you can reduce the risk of injury by about 69% and reduce the risk of death by about 42%. So with the implementation of this standard, we expect to see a reduction in the road fatalities.
I want to stay on this for just another second. Does the standard mean that does it have any bearing on like licensing or anything like that? Like you have to have this to get that license? Nothing like that? Or is it just a matter that this is what is expected of motorcycle users?
Well, with the standard in place, in collaboration with other regulators, we would be able to enforce the requirements. So it would start at the ports. At customs, they would check if it has a certification. So we have 3 major international certification labels that we look for. One of them is DOT, another is SNELL, both are from the US. And then you have the ECE, which is from Europe. So these would indicate that the standard meets the helmet meets the standards requirements.
Right. Oh, okay. So I like that. Collaboration with other entities so we balance it as we go through all of Jamaica. All right. So Lady James King, now what are some of the key safety requirements that are discussed or laid out, I should say, in the standard?
All right. So 2 of the most important safety requirements outlined in the JS 347-2026 are the general construction helmet requirements,
Right.
and the retention and fastening devices requirements.
Okay.
So some examples of these requirements are that helmets should have no sharp edges and rigid projections on the inside, and that the inside be lined with protective padding. Another example of this is that helmets must have a retention system to retain the helmet on the user's head.
Right.
And also, this retention system must have a chin strap that is anchored to the shell of the helmet, or it must be secured by another means that can
Keep it on the user's head there. Because the idea is that you don't want it maybe
lifting off. You want it to be securely on the user's head and firm on the user's head.
So those helmets that have the shell itself, but nothing under here.
No, that is not an approved helmet.
Got it.
This standard also outlines approved helmets. So you have helmets such as open-faced helmets, full-face helmets, half helmets, and three-quarters helmets. So those are approved helmets. Okay. Other than that,
no.
They are substandard.
Okay. I'm here trying to visualize some of those helmets. But Sir Slater, you mentioned the kind of vehicles. I think you said two-wheel and three-wheel vehicles. Right. Is this standard only applicable to motorcyclists, or does it expand beyond into anyone who uses a helmet on the road?
Well, the standard specifies users of two or three wheel vehicles, and of course you want to ensure that both the driver and the passenger, because sometimes you have someone sitting behind you want to ensure that both users of that vehicle are wearing a helmet. So it's anyone using a two or three wheel vehicles, this is what the standard would apply to.
Okay. Anyone who is using it. Yeah. All right. So, Lady James King, so how does this standard improve on what was there before?
That's a good question. So this standard builds on the existing road traffic regulations for protective helmets.
Right.
It moves beyond the general requirements and introduces more technical specifications.
Let me see if I understand. So perhaps you're saying that, okay, so helmets were required.
Yes.
But now we're talking what kind of helmets?
Well, more in detailed.
Right.
So the standard itself is aligned with global best practices. Hence, it moves from a more general way of thinking and into a more detailed way of thinking.
Got it.
So it provides manufacturers and importers with clear guidance on helmet construction and helmet performance and compliance, ensuring that helmets being sold on the Jamaican market are safe and fit for purpose.
Got it. Sir Slater, back to you. Now, the consumer. So your standards are made known to the importers, the sellers, the consumer. How can when I walk into a helmet shop, if we have helmet shops, how do I know what the right helmet to buy is?
Well, as I mentioned, we have the certification, so you want to look for the labels, which should be accompanied by a holographic sticker. You also want to check that it has the official brand logo. You want to check for the serial number. You want to do your own checks, see if the chin strap is secured. You want to see if there's sufficient padding. So you can do these various checks to ensure and, ask questions, verify the certification to make sure that you are indeed getting a helmet that will protect you on the road.
And as we go to our break, you're saying that it is both the responsibility of sellers and the buyers.
Indeed.
To ensure that we're sticking with the standard.
Indeed.
Got it. We are at the break, but please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Every day, we share personal information online, at work, and on our phones. But once it's shared, it can't always be taken back. Protect your data by avoiding oversharing, using strong passwords, and never clicking suspicious links. Be careful what you post. Don't share your live location, and keep your devices updated and secure.
Remember, Your data is valuable. Protecting it isn't optional, it's necessary.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're continuing our discussion on the new helmet standard introduced by the Bureau of Standards Jamaica and what it means for road safety. Still with us are Shane Slater, Senior Standards Development Officer, and Khadija James King, Standards Development Officer at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. Lady James King, the Bureau of Standards has announced plans to establish this regional motorcycle helmet testing facility.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
So the purpose of this facility is to verify the authenticity, performance, and compliance of helmets coming into the island. It will be the first of its kind in the Caribbean, and this initiative will enhance the national and regional capacity to test and verify helmet safety and performance.
And you guys mean regional. So helmets coming into Jamaica, I get that, being tested, but other countries can now use this facility?
Yes, so Caribbean countries can use our facility and also international countries.
Ah, okay. Sir Slater, so the broader road safety goals, I assume, will be to lower motorcycle fatalities and road fatalities in general. So what advice would you give to the average road user when it comes to protecting themselves, preparing themselves? What would you say to them?
Yes, so just to remind all road users and those who wear helmets that you want to purchase a certified helmet. So when you go to make your purchase, make sure you're purchasing from a reputable supplier. You want to make your decision not based on price, because this is truly a life or death situation. 30% of our fatalities are from motorcycle incidents, and wearing a certified helmet really does make a huge difference in whether you come out of that accident alive. So you want to purchase certified helmets, ask questions, do your checks, check your chin strap, check the protective padding, make sure that it is really secure and you're getting a product that will actually protect you in case of an accident.
Right, and you mentioned in the first segment about riders, you're buying a helmet by two, right?
Yes, indeed, because if you're, for some reason, there's also an additional rider, you want to ensure that both persons are protected.
Yeah. Got it. And where can members of the public go to learn more about this standard? Since members of the public have to know the standard as well, because we're checking for these things, and the importers and the sellers. So where can we go to learn more about it?
Yes, so members of the public can view or purchase a copy of the standard at our main office, which is located at 6 Winchester Road, or they can visit our website, www.bsj.org.jm.
And access it there. Wonderful. And I do have a question about the lab, and either of you can take this one up for me. Before the lab is established, how will this standard be enforced and how will it be monitored? Lady James King. Yes.
All right, so this standard will be enforced by the National Regulatory and Compliance Authority, which is the NCRA for short. So they will be the enforcers of this standard. So they will be monitoring for these requirements at the marketplace and at the ports. So they will be working along with the customs officers. Yes, so they will be the additional regulators to this.
Got it. And I'm thinking about how the lab works as we move to our close. For example, I'm assuming if the police maybe confiscate some helmets, then they can be brought into the lab.
Yes, and be tested.
Got it. Any final words in this last few seconds, Sir Slater?
Well, I just want to reiterate that it's, first of all, you need to wear a helmet every time you go.
Every time.
Every single time. Wear a certified helmet and drive safely, make good decisions on the road and make your purchases based on quality and safety and not on price.
Got it. So we have heard the plans of the BSJ. We have heard about the formation of this standard. It is for our protection as Jamaicans. Please ride and use the road responsibly. Your life is your responsibility. Our guests were Shane Slater, Senior Standards Development Officer, and Khadija James King, Standards Development Officer at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. And this has been Get the Facts. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take care.
Hey there, I'm Landy, your friendly guide to NLA Connect, the National Land Agency's customer engagement platform. Today we'll be navigating our page with some frequently asked questions.
Hey Landy, what's NLA Connect?
Hey there. NLA Connect is a simple, user-friendly online platform that's available 24/7 to customers, where they can submit various requests about land-related matters.
Hi Landy, how do I submit a request to NLA Connect?
Hi customer. Once on the platform, click Request and fill out the form with your details. Choose the relevant division and select the type of request. Pick your preferred response method, review, and consent to the privacy notice. Then submit. You will receive a case number to track your request.
Tell me something, Landy. Can you submit more than one request at a time?
No, you can only submit one request type at a time. Once that case is closed, feel free to send in another.
Landy, am I able to track my request?
Yes. To track your request status, click the Status tab, enter your email or case number, verify with the code sent to your email, and then view updates ranging from submitted to closed.
How does the NLA treat my data?
Our privacy policy is in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2020. As a result, some of the technical measures used to protect your data includes firewalls, encryptions, and regular system updates. Also, our employees are only provided with your information on a need-to-know basis. Still have questions? Visit www.nla.gov.jm. Go to Applications, select NLA Connect, and check out our FAQs tab for more information. NLA Connect, your voice, our priority.
In a game where every call matters, every decision is questioned, and every move is under scrutiny, she stands firm. In a space long dominated by men, one woman is rewriting the narrative, commanding the field, earning respect, and proving that passion knows no gender. This is the story of Stephanie Dale Yee Singh. Watch now to learn more in our series, Women in Unconventional Spaces.
In a sport dominated by men, one Jamaican woman is not just holding her own, she's commanding the field. From Spanish Town St. Catherine to the biggest stages in world football, Stephanie Dale Yee Singh is proving that passion, purpose, and faith can take you anywhere. Stephanie's journey began in Spanish Town, where she first kicked a ball, not knowing it would shape her future.
I used to play at all levels, from high school to college to club football, and decided that I was going to, give it up because it was that time and probably start life.
She studied baking technology at the University of Technology, honoring her grandmother's passion, but never letting go of hers, football. On the field, she continued to shine, winning 2 intercollegiate titles and representing clubs like Barbican FC, Los Perfectos, Reno, and Rivoli United. And with her baking degree in tow and football atop her mind, she tried coaching but found it wasn't for her. So, with the counsel of her cousin Jeremy Yee Singh, she considered becoming a referee.
At this point, he was a referee for like 3 years. And he always spoke about the benefits and like how far I can go in it because I have the background in football.
After that, Stephanie didn't just consider it, she took the plunge. Soon, she was an assistant referee in her first match.
My referee was Odette Hamilton. She's a FIFA referee right now. Like all the decisions I had to make, I thought it was so weird just running on the phone. I'm just used to being a player and running up and down. So all the decisions, she made them for me. I did the regular throwing, but every time I signal, I just giggled because it was just so weird. It was a new feeling. I didn't call any offsides for sure. She did all of that for me. But it was a good game. The spectators kind of cussed a little bit, but then when they heard it was my first game, they said, all right, we forgive her, you know, and they kind of warmed up to me.
Despite that rocky start, Stephanie Dale is having an impressive journey. Under-17 Championship in Grenada, FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup in Jordan and Uruguay, and then the pinnacle of world football, the FIFA Women's World Cup in France. Stephanie had reached the highest level of officiating. But her rise was not as easy as a mere suggestion from a relative. She had to work hard.
Fitness is your passport, so we have to be able to pass a fitness test. That was one. Two, the laws of the game, like it's always changing. Every year there are amendments to the laws of the game, so you have to keep abreast of the laws and its changes and then apply them to the games. So transitioning like from old law to new law, when I just started, because I was playing, the female fitness test was pretty easy for me, but then I had to do the female referral test, which with practice, it still was a bit manageable. I wouldn't say easy, but manageable. The harder part was when I had to do the male assistant referee test. So in order to do men's games, these games, I had to pass the men's test, even internationally. So practicing for the test or preparing for the test, we couldn't just do the regular men's test. We had to do like the male referee test, the World Cup test.
And passed she did. Now Stephanie isn't just officiating at the highest level, she has helped break barriers, becoming one of the first Jamaican women to officiate in men's competitions on the international stage. But the fitness isn't where her challenges end. Once she's on the field, there are other battles to be won.
So there are situations where players are aggressive and we have to know how to calm them down. We can't match their energy. You see, if you match their energy, then it's going to turn into a quarrel. But then when you try to diffuse the situation, then some of them actually do calm down and speak to you properly. And some of them, when you speak to them with respect, I find that they too will respect you. And them just come and apologize even after the game.
Unhappy fans sometimes add to the challenges, from intense scrutiny to the pressure of thousands of eyes watching and sometimes harsh criticism from the sidelines.
They give you such a hard time, but you have to be mentally tough, to be honest. You have to block them out or find ways and means to like stay focused and just do your job and know that you're an honest person. Because a lot of them feel like, you know, you're dishonest and you have a team or whatever, but no.
Through it all, Stephanie remains grounded. Her strength doesn't just come from training, but from faith. Now as she looks to the future, Stephanie hopes her story inspires others, especially young girls, dreaming of a place in football.
Find your passion. If football is your passion, it doesn't matter as a player, as a coach, as a referee. Find your passion, stick with it, and believe in yourself. And be amongst people who believe in you and who support you. Because I think that helped grounded me as well along the way. Having that support from family and in refereeing. Just having the right people to push you, to guide you as well and not lead you astray.
Think positively. Focus on the power of optimism and hope. The thoughts we nurture shape our attitudes, actions, and ultimately our lives. So, reflect on the good in your life.
out a host of drones, a fleet of drones that we use to manage our land resource. And they include small drones like the DJI Mavic 2 that I have, and also the larger drones like the DJI Matrix 350.
The National Land Agency, NLA, utilizes drones to effectively manage land resources through inspections. For smaller properties, the NLA employs smaller drones. In contrast, for larger properties, the agency opts for larger drones that can cover more ground and conduct longer flights to map extensive areas. The NLA integrates drone technology across several departments. It uses drones for land valuation, inspections, and deratings. Additionally, the drones assist in property mapping, cadastral surveys, and topographic surveys. The agency's estate management division also benefits from this technology, as it aids in managing various properties and land leases.
We've also incorporated the technology in hydrographic surveys. So we're mapping many of our piers, many of our nearshore harbors, and we're using the drone technology to assist the hydrographers as well in their work. Additionally, we have implemented a drone pilot training course where individuals can come and they can be trained as drone pilots. That's a tremendous course. It actually has taken off very well. It's a 3-week course and it's a premium course. So we do advise that persons can come and become a part of that course, and when they leave, they'll be certified drone pilots. Our HR department, they have a form that can be filled. So once someone has an interest, they can give us a call, and we can actually give them the information as to how to sign up for that course. Currently, the cost of this course is 150,000 Jamaican dollars. We have kept that cost for the last 3 years. And this is a premium course, it's worth much more than that. When an individual comes into this course, they will learn the theory behind drone technology. They will learn how to do drone maneuvers so that they can be safe while flying. They will learn all the rudiments of the drone and how it works. They'll also learn the legal requirements. So they'll learn how to apply for a permit to fly. They'll learn how to operate within the airspace, which most persons who are flying drones do not understand, that there are laws, regulations, do's and don'ts. So it's a very packed course, and the persons will leave as robust pilots.
We've come to the end of today's show. I do hope that you enjoyed this package. To catch a repeat of this or any other, feel free to log on to our website at gis.gov.jm. Until next time, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.